Hello and welcome to or welcome back to my channel. This is David's Closet. On this channel we talk about handbags, accessories, small leather goods, all of those fun things from the male point of view and on a budget. If that is something that's interesting to you, please subscribe to my channel. As always, I'm working really hard to grow, and when I'm filming this, I'm just under my 1,000 mark, so I'd greatly appreciate it. And if you are new here and this is the first time you're seeing me, please subscribe, check out my channel. There's a lot of handbag and lifestyle and all this fun stuff to catch up on. There's a bunch of videos over the past couple of years that you can watch. Please comment, like, share, do all of the things, help me out. I would greatly appreciate it. And for those of you who do already support my channel, I appreciate you very much. So today's video, I've been really excited about filming, and I kind of changed it as I was writing out my notes because this is more of an informational video, so I had to make some notes on it. This is going to be a pre-loved, why I buy pre-loved, and about all the pre-loved sites that I like. And as I was writing out these notes and kind of talking over in my head how I was going to present it, it just seemed a little bit too long as I ramble on. So I'm going to do two videos. This video is going to be comparing the sites that I have experience with and maybe a couple that I've never used, but I'm going to throw them in here to each other. So I'm comparing, obviously the main two is the Real and Fashionphile. Those are two that I have purchased from now. I know there's others like Rebag, What Comes Around Goes Around, which I have bought from, but I purchased in a store, so I may throw a few tidbits in here, but overall, I don't feel like I have enough to really talk about those two companies. And then I'm also going to talk about Poshmark and eBay. I'm primarily focusing on Poshmark. My research was all on Poshmark, but I know eBay is very similar. So again, if you know anything different or I'm wrong or I don't mention something that you think is important, put it down below so everyone viewing can see it. So then I'm going to do a video after this one at another time that kind of explains why I buy pre-loved versus new, and all of that, kind of break that down. So these two will kind of go together. And I'll be sure when I post that video, this one will be tagged in there, all the stuff. So I'm going to get started, and I do have notes, so if you hear paper, I apologize. I'm going to start with in my opinion, this is the shortest topic, and kind of get it out of the way, and that's Poshmark. So as you guys know, I sell on Poshmark, I also buy on Poshmark, and I do have a little bit of experience on both ends. So I'm talking primarily from the purchasing side when I'm reviewing these sites and kind of telling you my experiences and all the fun things. Poshmark, and again, I'm going to throw eBay in here. I know there's others like Mercari, Etsy, all of those things. I've never purchased from there. Posh and eBay I have. They're unique in the fact that you are dealing directly with the seller. I'm not dealing with a third party who's getting the item from the seller and sending it to me. I'm dealing directly with John Smith, the seller. I do think that there's pros and cons. The pros are you're dealing directly with the source and there's a little bit more flexibility. Depending on the platform, you know, that person can make the decision on what they want to sell it for. Whereas when you're consigning, my understanding is sometimes the consigners tell you here's a range and it could be very low. Whereas when I'm selling something, if someone offers me an absurdly low amount, I can counter a decline, whereas I won't have that same luxury with some others. And then as a buyer, you're dealing directly with the person and you can kind of tell, you know, where they're at, what they want. I always browse their closet on Poshmark, see what other things have sold for before I go make an offer. Because if I look at everything and, you know, they have a bag listed for $200 and I go look through and majority of their bags have sold around $200, I know they're more than likely not going to accept an offer much under $200. So that's one thing I always do. And I just think that's nice, and you can kind of get some diversity there. Now, as far as shipping, I know that on Posh you can offer shipping discounts as a seller, as well as eBay, and I'm sure all the others are the same. But as a general rule, you have to pay for shipping. Now, most of these companies have flat rates, like Poshmark, it's like $8 or $9. eBay, I see varying shipping costs. I'm gonna guess the seller gets to kind of pick what the shipping costs are. That is something to take into account. And then again, I know on eBay specifically, some items can be available for return, but as a general rule, Poshmark, no return. So you really want to make sure it's something that you want before you buy it. And that's one of the reasons I tend to not buy super high-end luxury from places like this, because I like the ability to return something. Now, dealing directly with the seller, I understand that it would be much more difficult to return stuff because these people are not stores. They are not, multi-million-dollar conglomerates. It's, Joe Smith who sold you this item and he's going to want a refund. It's a pain. I get it. As a seller, I'm glad that Poshmark doesn't allow me to do returns. Now, if something is wrong or you've completely misrepresented something, I know that you can open a case with Poshmark and they do make it right. I've never had to do it myself, nor have I had to do it as a seller, but it is an option, but it's something to keep in mind when you're buying. And then for certain items, they do authenticate. I know eBay and Poshmark both. I don't know the dollar threshold. I believe for Poshmark, it's anything over 500 has to go to Poshmark to be authenticated. So if I sell a Louis Vuitton Speedy, it's going to go to Poshmark, get authenticated, then sent to the customer. And I do like that. But anything under that threshold, they don't authenticate. And I know majority of things aren't going to be under that threshold, but it would be nice. People still do make non-authentic Coach bags and things like that. So that's something to keep in mind, is there's really no authentication unless you're spending a certain dollar amount. And then, in my opinion, because of all these factors, I only buy contemporary brands right now, and I don't see that changing in the future from these kinds of sites, because I'm going to be less angry if I get somehow ripped off on a $200 Coach bag, but if I get ripped off on a $2,000 Chanel bag, I'm going to be really mad, and that's going to hurt. So just keep that in mind. So the Real is the next one I'm going to talk about. I'm saving Fashionphile for last because it's my favorite. And first and foremost, we're going to just kind of talk about the return policy, because to me that is the most important factor when I am buying something, is the return policy. Because living where I live, I can't go into a Louis Vuitton and preview some of these items before I go buy them pre-loved. I can't do that. I don't have those stores. So sometimes these bags I've never seen in person. So when they come to me, it's the very first time I'm touching them. So you just don't know if you're going to be in love with it or not. So on the Real, anything that is eligible for return must be requested within 14 days from the shipping date, and then must be received to them by 21 days of the shipping date. So they do give you a little bit more time than some others with that processing time to get it back to them. I've also seen some inconsistencies in some of the places online. Some of their little paragraphs say that it has to be postmarked within 21 days, but then the return policy itself states clearly must be received to them by 21 days. So I don't know. They're very unclear and unorganized, I feel, in some cases. The return policy also says no bags are ever eligible for return. I don't know if that's true. I feel like I have seen some bags listed that are eligible, but maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe they're clutches and maybe they don't consider a clutch a bag. I don't really know. And then any item over 40% off the original list price is not eligible. And then if it's a final sale or a condition as is, it's obviously not eligible for return either. And some items you can't even purchase the return guarantee. I don't necessarily love the idea of having to purchase a return guarantee. And for those of you who don't know, you can watch my video. I'll link it below. I did a collab with Ed Braun where I made my first purchase from the Real. You have to pay a certain percentage of the sales price in order to make that returnable. And basically what that is you are buying a third-party insurance policy. Let's just say it's a $1,000 item. Let's just say for math's sake, it's 10%. You pay this company $100 and they say, we will let you return that minus $18 or whatever it is. I'm just gonna say 20 to make it easy, minus a $20 return fee, which is basically the shipping that they provide to you to send it back to them. You're not sending it back to the Real, you're sending it to this other company, and then they probably resell them wholesale somewhere, or sell them back to the Real. I don't like that. Again, if I'm buying something online, I may have never seen it before in person, and I'm sorry, the Real also, as we know, doesn't always have the greatest photos and descriptions. I know Ed's bag with our collab was stinky and they never disclose odor. I've never seen odor on any other descriptions. And I've actually returned an item that you haven't seen yet because I have purchased 3 items from them. You haven't seen the third. The third was returned and they were great about it, but it had a little bit of an odor to it that I just didn't love. And that wasn't disclosed. And that to me is frustrating. Now that item was eligible for return, so I didn't have to buy this insurance policy, luckily. But I just don't like that. I shouldn't have to pay an additional X% in order to return something if I don't like it or it doesn't meet the quality that it was described as. Now I do know, and with Ed's case, he didn't buy the return guarantee, but he was still able to return it because the issues with the bags were not disclosed. You can't count on that though. And that's what I don't like, is I can't always count that they're going to do that. So if I'm spending a good amount of money, you know, $800, $900, it may be worth it to buy the return guarantee, even though I don't want to, because you just can't guarantee that they will always cave. Now, as far as return cost on something that is eligible, for example, the item that I returned, I had to pay a $14.95 return fee to send it back because I have to pay my return shipping. Now, I do like the fact that since you have to pay the initial shipping, it appears they essentially refund you the original shipping. So I just always think about it, you know, it still sucks that you have to pay anything to return it, but $14.95 to return something is not the end of the world when you're talking about hundreds and maybe thousands of dollars. Any promotional credits that you use will be refunded as a store credit. And I learned that with my first item that got canceled. I used the store credit and they had to apply it as a credit, which I used to buy something else. Now with excessive returns, which is the reason all of these companies have made such strict return policies, some of it's probably valid, because when I return something, there's a reason for it. I'm not someone that just buys something just to, you know, open it and then send it back, but I do feel like that I've heard that that does happen a lot, and that's why some of these policies are not as good anymore. Fashionphile is the biggest culprit of that. So on a 12-month rolling calendar, if you have 30 or more returns, return items over $10,000 in value, and or have a return rate of 85% or higher, then you get strikes. And I believe it's a 3-strike policy, and after you kind of strike out, before you can buy anything, you have to call the RealReal, ask questions, clarify, and then basically your item is not refundable ever. At least that's my understanding when I read their site. So I think that's nice, because that does need to happen. If you're returning 85% of your stuff, what are you doing? Like, clearly something is wrong. And then of course they charge you the fee, and if you have to pay the insurance, you're out that money too. So the insurance premium that you pay is not included in your refund. So if you return $1,000 items, let's say it's 10%, you're out $100 for the insurance policy plus the $15 shipping or whatever they charge. Some pros of the RealReal, the prices. The RealReal does have really, really good prices. They are consistently and considerably lower than all other websites that I've seen, and for that I really do like it. They tend to also do more coupons that apply to various things, and they do more sales as far as I've noticed. The processing time is incredibly fast, with the exception of the one bag that they didn't have in stock, and that's why it got canceled. Long story. Every time I order something, it ships the next day. Like, I order something on Monday, it's out the door by Tuesday afternoon. And I do like that. Sometimes Fashionphile, I've had to wait 3 or 4 days before my item ships. So I do like that. And then they do have a large variety of brands, and I think this is a positive, but they sell all sorts of brands. They sell Coach, Kate Spade, Tory Burch. They have unbranded bags that I've seen. And then they have the super high-end luxury Hermes, Prada, Chanel, Louis Vuitton, Dior. They have all of those. And I think that's nice because it gives people an opportunity to buy all sorts of brands. But you do have to be careful, and you need to be knowledgeable when you're using this site, because, and I'm going to throw some screenshots up here. I've seen some items listed as like Coach 1941, which is Coach's, you know, premium luxe brand, and they're actually Coach outlet bags that are listed under that. So you just really need to be aware of what you're buying, and definitely take a look at it. Sometimes it's a gamble. Sometimes something will be listed as like blue, and you look at the photos and it's clearly red. You don't know if you're going to get a blue one or a red one at this point, so just always be aware of those things and make sure you do research before you buy. So if you see a bag, for example, it's marked Coach 1941, reverse image that bag, make sure that's not an outlet bag, make sure that you're paying a fair price, because the one I'm showing you an example of is priced higher than it ever was at the outlet when it was brand new at the outlet. And I believe it's the City or the Gallery tote. It's not a 1941 bag, so just be aware of that. Some cons: horrible pictures, horrible descriptions. You know, they don't disclose a lot of stuff. As I mentioned, wrong pictures, wrong classifications, wrong labeling. The items they have for sale tend to be, looks like, less condition than others. They sell a lot more like worn out and worn down bags. So that's something you got to keep your eye out for when you're buying. And then the overall return policy, it's just not great, and I don't love it at all. So I did just a little rough math. I purchased 3 items. I've returned 1. My return percentage is 33%, so take that for what it's worth. It's a pretty small number, so it's really hard to have an accurate depiction, but I still feel very strong about what I purchased from them. Again, I always educate myself on these items. And as long as they send me something, like say for example, if I buy a bag like Ed and it stinks and it's not disclosed, as long as they make it right, I'm okay with it. I still think it's frustrating and I wish that they would do better, but as long as they make it right, that's fine. But again, we can't guarantee that they will. So now we're going to move to my favorite, which is Fashionphile. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, and I'm trying to keep it in the same format. I didn't write it in the same format for some reason. So I obviously have more experience with Fashionphile. I will tell you, I have purchased, I believe, I went through and tried to count while I was doing other things, 22 items, and I've returned 4. So I have an 18% return rate with them. In the time that I've been buying, I've been purchasing from them for like 3 or 4 years now. The return policy is much better. It used to be great. It used to be 30 days from the date receipt, as long as the tags are attached, no questions asked. They've changed it again, very likely due to excessive returns. Now it's 15 days. You have to request the return and have it postmarked within 15 days of the shipped date. Now, I think that they also do that to try to encourage people to pay for the expedited shipping. Just like the Real, it's all based off the ship date, which I do not like because I have no control. Once it's in the post offices or the UPS or FedEx, it says hands, I don't have any control over how fast the item gets to me. So I don't like that. But I also think they do it sneakily to try to get you to buy the expedited shipping because you know they have negotiated rates with these companies. And let's say, for example, Fashionphile, and they offer the base shipping is always free, which I love. Real needs to do that. And then they say it's $14.99, but then they say it's free. It's covered, complimentary on us. That shipping isn't $14.99. They've negotiated that. It's probably $6. And then you step up a tier, and let's just say it's $30. They paid $15. You know what I mean? So I'm sure that there's some sort of incentive for them. So that's probably why they do that. That's one thing I don't like. And I hate that it's not the 30 days anymore. I personally don't mind if it's under 30 days. Let me clarify. I just wish it was 30 days from, or 15 days from receipt of the item. From when the item is left in my hands, then I have 15 days to decide. I hate it because depending on the shipping speed, if it takes a week to get to you, you may only have like 5 or 6, 7 days to decide if you want to keep this item or not. Now, typically I know right away, so it's not a huge deal, but I do miss the old policy. For them, they do have an excessive returns. It's a 6-month rolling calendar, and if you're 70% or higher on your return rate, there will be a 10% fee added to anything that you return. So I do like that. Unlike the Real, they don't just kind of cut you off, but they do require this. And I have seen before when you purchase items, it'll say in the little box below, you know, in all the fine text, that certain items require them to call and verify with you before they'll complete your order, process it, and ship it. So maybe if you have a really high return rate, they will call you and say, hey, here's this bag. I love that there's no shipping. They typically take higher condition items. I feel like the Real has more worn out items listed, and Fashionphile, you don't see as much that's as worn out. I feel like they tend to accept items traditionally that are a much higher quality and much higher condition, and they only deal in the luxury brands. There are some brands on there that I wouldn't consider a luxury, like Marc Jacobs. I love Marc Jacobs, but Marc Jacobs really isn't a luxury house in my opinion. I know it's owned by LVMH, that's probably why it's snuck in there. But they do sell traditionally higher end brands. They don't sell Coach, Kate Spade, any of that on their website. And they do have better descriptions, and their descriptions are much better. There are a few times where there's things that still aren't disclosed well. I have experienced that a handful of times, but nothing like I've heard from other sites like the Real. And then authenticity, I know that they probably, yes, have had issues where they've accidentally sold counterfeit items, but I feel like, again, other sites have dealt with that a lot more and been sued for that a lot more. So I just feel more trustworthy of Fashionphile based on those two factors. And the fact that if I buy something, and let's just say it's stinky, the only thing I'm out now is a $14.99 shipping fee, because they also charge a $14.99 shipping fee. I forgot to mention. So I'm out $15 if I want to return it. Not the end of the world. So between all those factors, I just like buying from them better because I feel like the descriptions are better. And even if they're not, I can return my item. I like that they have luxury layaway. Now I've only used it, I'm using it right now for an item while I'm filming. By the time you see this, hopefully it'll be paid for and on its way to me. They changed it recently. You used to have to put like 20% down. Now it's 10% down. You used to have to wait 5 days from when the item listed to when it was reserve eligible. Now it's reserve eligible day 1, which I love. And you get 60 days to pay it off interest free, and then they ship it to you once that's over. But you do have to pay a 10% restocking fee in addition to the $14.99 return shipping fee if you do end up returning an item that you purchased on reserve. Now, I've never done this, but Cami of Cami's Closet, she calls them and has them send her videos, has them confirm the condition, verify anything that she can't see, and she's smart for doing that. And I have thought about doing that before as well on a few items, because she doesn't want to have to pay the 10% and the return shipping. If she buys something, especially on reserve, it comes to her and there's, a scuff on the corner that wasn't disclosed. So that's really good. They do that, and I think that's really cool. So some cons of Fashionphile is the overall return policy isn't as good as it used to be, but it's still far better than the RealReal, for example. The prices overall are much higher traditionally than the RealReal. Now, I have found some really good buys. You guys have seen my videos. Once in a blue moon, they will sneak in some really good deals, and it kind of goes up and down. But as a general rule, the RealReal is cheaper. And then overall, I think their processing time is much slower than the RealReal. As I said, the RealReal is really fast. The RealReal's really fast. Fashionphile tends to take a couple more days for my items to ship, but not the end of the world. Now, as far as pros, overall, I feel more comfortable buying from Fashionphile. I feel their authenticity is better, more guaranteed. They both have the lifetime guarantee, of course. Their descriptions and photographs are just much better. And if something is wrong, where I just don't like the bag, I'm not out as much of my personal money to return it. I don't have to buy a return policy. I don't have to do all that jazz. I can send it back, pay $15, get my, $1,000 back, minus 15, and call it a day. I also love that they offer free shipping. Again, I know they charge a little bit more on the item, but it's just nice to not have to worry about shipping. And then overall, I just think they sell higher quality items as opposed to the RealReal. So this video is getting very long, so I am going to stop here. Let me know if you have any questions, if I missed something, or there's something that you kind of want to know more details on below. I can either do another video, I can comment and follow up, and then keep your eye out for upcoming videos. I am going to do, like I said, a video where I kind of explain why I buy pre-loved, how I buy pre-loved, and my tips and tricks. But this is just to kind of compare the platforms that I have experience with, so you guys can kind of see my thought process on why I buy maybe from certain stores and I don't from others. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.